course. I've got a long road ahead. How much farther can I go?
Your skull pounds in response to the Githyanki's white-hot stare. Her lips don't move, yet you hear her voice.
You stay put and keep your lips sealed. Ryder, my time is short. Lead me to...
Shh! Such a familiar tone. Were I not merciful, I would slice the skin clean from your meat. Yet you are not bleeding, for I am nothing if not merciful. Your name, child?
Lae'zel.
Lae'zel. Proud, regal, even.
You will call me Gestil Kithrak.
Voss, Knight Supreme. The Queen's silver, the Queen's sword.
I am who you say.
A Geich vessel has fallen from the sky, Lae'zel. Thieves aboard have taken a weapon most precious.
It is polyhedric in shape and inscribed with the sacred runes of our people.
You feel Shadowheart's anxiety. The weapon that Voss seeks. It's the artifact that she carries. Her mind focuses. The Gith's suspicion cannot be aroused. They cannot discover that the weapon they seek is right within their grasp.
Take word to your creche. You are to join our search. Speak up, child. Affirm your mandate.
My mandate, Gestil Kithrak, is to locate this creche. I was infected aboard a Geich ship and need to be purified. Your mandate is to aid me.
Purified? Oh, Lae'zel, why must the truth be so bitter? Soon your skin will go grey and your blood will run silver. You will shed your skin to become Geich. Only in death are the infected cleansed. But you were on the Nautiloid. You possess what I seek.
You will give it to us. Then you will bend your head for the sword.
Stand down, Knight. I do not have what you seek.
Our Queen's word binds me.
Beretha, see her skull split and her corpse examined. I will take word to Queen Vlaakith. Our quest has ended.
A current of deception carries Voss's words. Wherever he flies, it is not to Vlaakith.
To Danos, to the sky!
always be a gentleman?
The lesson is death.
Traitors to our queen! I will make you...
Mutilate them. You're mine.
No choice but to keep going. With haste.
Have to keep going. Traitor!
What a day. No one's stopped me yet.
Skaketh! I have followed protocol. He does not speak for Vlaakith. I will be pure. I will join my queen.
Your skull briefly aches, and you are her. You feel the woman's anger at the Dragon Rider.
I remember. You were on the Ga'ath.
You note the look in her eye, the slight tilt of her head.
Yet even a feared Sard could not break you in battle. I know of a cure. Lend me your...
Lies. Just get rid of her.
Here's a Kithrak, a Githyanki knight. He is also a traitor. He says death is the only path to purification. I know this to be a lie. My cure, our cure, awaits us at a creche. Make space, and my might is yours. Very well, but heed my word. A crash is near. We must seek signs of it. Search these corpses for a map, and I will await word.
Unusual runes are etched on the slate, forming an array of arcs and circles. Magical energy courses through the slate. You are flooded with understanding. A mystical map glows before you, revealing a Githyanki refuge inside a temple within the mountain pass. The slate also reveals the Githyanki's purpose. They are combing the Sword Coast in search of a polyhedric relic of great importance to their queen.
Best be on my way.
Which way to the nearest library?
Can't afford to stay idle.
What to do?
How delicious. Shall we?
Is that blood? No, never mind. Need to find a way forward.
Fighter on Earth. When that guy's fighting, when he gets into the cage on the day, whatever it is, that Saturday night, this is a peak of performance and training that cannot be maintained. He wants to catch it right when he's right there, when the body hasn't broken down yet, the immune system hasn't broken down yet, the endocrine system isn't fried, the adrenals aren't fried. You're getting it to right when your body can recover and is forced to maintain this insane level of fitness, and then you have to take a break. Like, you cannot maintain fight camp all year round. You will not be able to do it. Your body will break down.
So this.
So it's not, my point is, like, that requires discipline.
Right.
Because that is no longer, you're no longer in the inspiration realm. You're not in the obsession realm. You are, I'm sure, as well. But you're also in, there's no fucking way you want to do it. There's no way you want to do more sprints. There's no way you want to do all this stuff. You must do it, though. You must do the calisthenics. You must do the live wrestling drills. You must do the Shark Tank, where they throw in a new, fresh opponent every round for 5 rounds. So you're dealing with rested killers and you're exhausted. You have to do that. And that's pure discipline. And generally enforced discipline by coaches. Because it's so rigid, it's so hard to do, that you need someone over you with a stopwatch. Go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And everybody has to get up and go at it, because even the most disciplined, their body recognizes they need a break.
Right.
So that's pure discipline.
Lost in
What I had was this obsession that made that hard work easy.
Right,
Because
right. So that's a key thing. Okay, so now imagine that underneath that, there's a implicit or unconscious goal. Okay, so and I'm saying this for a very specific reason. So the positive emotion that motivates people is always experienced in relationship to a goal. Now, this is a very important thing for everyone to understand, because it means that if you don't have a goal, you have no positive emotion. And it also means that the higher your goal, the more positive emotion you experience when you're moving towards it, because positive emotion signifies progress towards a goal. So you need a goal. The goal of the deepest religious traditions is the ultimate goal, by definition. So the idea is that you need a goal, and so you should pick the utmost possible goal. That's another good definition of something like the kingdom of heaven or the realm of the divine, the ultimate goal. Now you have a goal, and every time you see movement towards it, you're going to get what would you say? You're riding on the energy that's associated with movement towards that goal. That's dopaminergically mediated. That's the same systems that are affected by cocaine and methamphetamine and so forth. All the positive emotion drugs. So you need a goal. That goal, now you can imagine this, that if you're attentive to the action of your own instincts or the divine voice, I don't think those are distinguishable, then a goal is going to emerge that catalyzes a series of transformations. This is what happens to Abraham. So he has a series of adventures after he decides that he's going to go out in the world. And every adventure is marked by the erection of a sacrificial altar and a recommitment of his upward aim. Now there's 2 reasons for that. One is that he reminds himself that he's aiming upward and he's on an adventure. And the second is he admits to himself that with every transformation of character, something has to be sacrificed. You know, so now I'm curious about this in your own life, right? So you started obsessively committing to martial arts. What did you have to give up to do that?
Social life.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
That's basically it. I was a kid.
Okay, social life.
I didn't really have responsibilities other than school, so I had to leave from school and go right to training.
Okay, so there's an emergent idea in that story of adventure-led transformation, that with every profound transformation of character, something that's not appropriate has to be let go of. That's why, by the way, that's why Abraham's story culminates in the sacrifice of his son. Because the sacrifices get higher in value as the developmental progression upward continues. And that's basically the story of individual development. Right? You follow the call of adventure, aim upward, continually remind yourself of your fundamental goal, and then let go of everything that isn't appropriate as you transform forward. So Abraham ends up with a new name because of doing that. That's how different he becomes in the course of his adventure. It's like Jacob. Jacob becomes Israel, and Abram becomes Abraham, because the consequence of him following the pathway of adventure, the calling, is a transformation that's so complete it's as if he's a different person. And that, those stories are maps of that transformative process. So they culminate in the Christian view of things with the ultimate sacrificial offering. So that's the idea that lurks in the New Testament, is that the ultimate in transformation is brought about by your willingness to put absolutely everything on the line, no matter what.
Right away.
Right. And that's a very different view of the religious enterprise than something like defense against death anxiety. Right? It's the ultimate adventure, and that's the willingness to welcome everything about life that's terrible and painful and malevolent, to welcome that with open arms, to accept that. And that's predicated on a deeper idea even, which is that sacrifice is the basis of community, which is exactly right. Because you have to give up something to be in relationship to the future and to other people.
Right.
Right, so the biblical corpus is an examination of, what would you say, levels of sacrifice moving downward to the ultimate possible level of sacrifice. So in the Abrahamic story, Abraham is requested by God to offer up his son. Right, now he gets him back. The threat isn't carried through. And what does that mean? It means, first of all, that everything in your life, no matter what it is, including your relationships, should be made subservient to the highest possible aim. It also means that a good father sacrifices his children to what's highest. That's the offering of your child to the world, the faithful offering of your child to the world. That's what Mary does. It's a famous statue of Mary in St. Peter's in Rome. Michelangelo made it when he was like 23, some ridiculous early age. Brilliant statue. Mary is holding the body of her son, broken, in her arms, looking serene. He's an adult, off the cross. It's like the female crucifixion. And the idea is that the good mother, the proper father, offers their children to be broken by the world in the pursuit of what's highest.
There it is.
Yeah.
He was 23 when he made that? That is insane. God, how...
What were you doing when you were 23?
Telling shitty jokes.
Single block of marble. Yeah, and so see, that's an indication of sacred femininity, because, see, the psychoanalyst said in the early part of the 20th century that the good mother necessarily fails. And so what does that mean? Well, every woman who brings a child into the world knows that the child is going to be broken by death and malevolence. Right, and so motherhood in its highest aspect is the offering of the child to the world, to be broken. That's what's portrayed in the Abrahamic story too, with regards to Abraham. To get your child back, you offer them to the world. That's a profound indication of faith, right? That life is worthwhile despite its suffering and its evil.
And it's so good. Like the work, like look at his foot. Just look at the detail on the way the toe bends, the heel. It's insane how good it is. He was so good. The fact that he figured out how to be that good at 23 years of age is just so shocking.
Well, also so inspiring, you know.
So inspiring, but stunning. Like stunning how good it is.
Yes, and stunning what it means and where it's.
And the understanding of anatomy. Did he really?
May you keep that.
Wow. Insane. I mean, that guy left behind so much. Like, what is that about? What is it about these unique individuals like him that their work transcends time? And
that's life eternal. That ability to transcend time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thousands of years later.
Well, so what happens in the Abrahamic story, because it's relevant to your question. So God offers Abraham the opportunity to be the father of nations. Okay, so imagine this as a father. So we use father as a generic word, but everybody has a father. So there's a generic aspect to it. There's a role that you play if you're a father, and then you could imagine there's a role you could play as a good father. And if you're a good father, you're radically encouraging. And you encourage your children to go out into the world and prevail. You teach them to handle serpents. You don't protect them. You don't shelter them. You push them out and you say, no matter what comes your way, kid, I've got confidence that you can handle it. No matter how terrible it is, no matter how challenging or daunting or malevolent it is, you've got it. And when you see your children doing that, if you're a good father, it fills you with what? It fills you with gratitude and love to see your children acting that out, even at an early age, to taking the risks of their first steps or climbing their first play structure or going out into the ground to make new friends when they're strangers or going off to school alone. All of that, you think. It's dangerous out there. It's like, good, go. I know you can handle it. Okay, so that's what Abraham plays out. He plays out that archetypal role. And the idea there, this is why I made reference earlier to the idea of the selfish gene. Dawkins characterized human reproduction as selfish. That's wrong, because the human reproductive pattern is multi-generational. And if you want to establish the pattern of fatherhood that's going to cascade down the generations, that will make your descendants successful in the multi-generational manner, then you follow the spirit of adventure and you imbue your children with that confidence. And that's how that pattern that establishes the dynasty, so Abraham is the father of nations, is established. So human reproduction is way more complex than just sex. Far more complex. It's a multi-generational commitment. So now the promise that God makes to Abraham, in part, is that if you fall into that pattern of maximal adventure and courageous movement forward, that your life is imbued with a meaning with the meaning that transcends time, and that you embody something like an archetypal and eternal spirit, and that's the spirit of the Father. That's why Abraham understands that he's made contact with the God of his ancestors. And if you're a good father, you have that spirit dwelling within you. And the Christian insistence is that that spirit's identical to the logos that bears the weight of the world on its shoulders voluntarily. And that's what brings everything into being. Stunning. It's a stunning conceptualization. And I think it's right. It looks right to me. And the idea that sacrifice is the basis of the community, that's just obvious. Like the fact that you're married. So what's the sacrificial gesture there?
What am I to do?
Well, all of the women, that's sacrifice number one. Then it's not about you. It's also not about your wife. It's about the stability of your union across time. And it's about the stability of that union insofar as that's a reliable foundation for your children. So that's sacrificial too. You give up your whims in the present so that the future's stabilized. You give up your immaturity so that your children can thrive. That's all sacrificial gesture. And we figured that out. That's why we put the crucifix at the center of our society. We figured out, even though we didn't know it, we figured out that the stability of the community is predicated on the willingness of the individual to sacrifice. And the exploration in the New Testament is the limits of sacrifice. Right?
So do you think that that's what people think of when they think of the cross?
It's very hard to think about. It's very hard to know what people think about. I would say it depends on their level of sophistication.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever been explained to me that way, and I don't think most people think about it that way when they think about it. They think Jesus died for our sins. There he is. Praise Jesus.
Right.
It's a very
formulaic,
surface level understanding.
Well, I think
of what
it's
it is we're
partly
talking
because
about.
it's partly, and there's a merciful element of it. And this is what Jung was referring to when he said that religion helps protect people against religious experience. The full revelation of the significance, let's say, of the imitation of Christ, which is supposed to be the foundation of Christian belief, is in fact the demand that you walk the same pathway. And that's it's the most terrifying demand, because so Jung described the Christian passion as an archetypal tragedy. Now, there was a reason for that. So think about it this way. Think about it technically. So imagine that 100 great storytellers told the most painful possible story. And then imagine that you aggregated all those stories and you distilled them into one story where all the terrible elements were present. Okay, so now you have a representation. You have a representation of the worst life can throw at you. Okay, so let's take that apart a bit. So the first thing that makes a tragedy tragic is that the tragedy befalls a good person. Because if a tragedy befalls a villain, it's just justice. It's not a tragedy. So it has to be a good person. So then, to amplify that, you would not only have the tragedy befall a good person, you'd have it befall a good person that everyone knew was good, but was not only good, was the best, and that was persecuted because he was good. So that sort of limits it out in that direction. And then you might say, well, what does he have to face? Well, and the answer would be, well, the worst life has to offer. Okay, early death, early painful death, early painful humiliating, unjust death at the hands of his friends, at the hands of the mob, under the thumb of a tyrant. Right. Brought about by people who knew that he was not only good, but the best of men. That's an archetypal tragedy. And then it doesn't limit out. So then you have the death that occurs in consequence of that, and it's voluntary acceptance. But that's not where it ends, because the mythology surrounding the crucifixion story insists that Christ harrowed hell after the crucifixion, which meant that he confronted not only death, but malevolence itself.
A little
and
souvenir.
in consequence transcended both. And so what's the underlying psychological message? It's something like the calling and the voice of conscience,
What's in
informing
here?
people that in order to thrive properly in life and to become who you could be, if you could be everything you could be, you have to voluntarily take on the weight of the worst life has to offer, including the depths of malevolence itself. And you think, well, obviously, Joe, you know this. Like, how are you going to adapt to a situation you won't even admit to?
Right.
Well, so how could it be then for you to become everything that you could be? You have to embrace the catastrophes that life has to offer. Like, how could it be other than that? You're going to hide? You're going to pretend?
Right.
How's that going to work? No one thinks that'll work.
Right.
And so, and you're right, there is this defensive element to the, particularly the Protestant religious tradition, although I don't want to single out the Protestants specifically, that, you know, the work has already been done. But there's a lot of ambivalence about that in the Christian canon, because there's an equal insistence that, no, you're supposed to take all this on voluntarily. And that not only that, that's it's such an interesting idea, because it makes so much sense psychologically. So imagine as your courage grows, you can confront more and more of the horror of life, that a spirit begins to develop within you that gives you a strength that's commensurate with your daring. That's walking with God. That's the same thing. So the promise is that if you had the courage, something would be with you to allow you to bear up nobly under the burden. And all the clinical evidence supports that proclamation, because what you see in people in the therapeutic transformation is that insofar as they're willing to confront what terrifies them voluntarily, they get stronger. And then imagine that there's nothing but a metaphysical limit to that.
Death you'll find in the
and I think that's right. I can't see how it cannot be right.
It makes sense, and it resonates with how we know people that have overcome great things in their life and become these very unusual and unique people. I gotta pause because I have to use the restroom. But let's jump right back in. Where were we?
Make a run for it.
Well, we were kind of bringing We Who Wrestle with God to a close, I would say.
Yeah.
I've got other projects I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
All right? Sure. We're launching Peterson Academy today. So, online university.
Fine.
We hope. We'll see. We're launching with 20 courses. Best lectures in the world. Very, very high quality production. We invited the best lecturers I could find down to Miami. 8-hour courses on the topic they really want. Highest possible production. Quality, and we're hoping we'll make a high-level, university equivalent education available to everyone for approximately 1/20th the cost. So that's the plan. The opening salvo?
Sure. Yeah. Put it up, Jamie.
Yeah. Let's take a look. I ran this before my lectures, this last tour.
You got to put the headphones on if you want.
Yeah, okay. Why did I decide to build an online university? Well,
there is a crisis now in higher education.
President of Harvard University resigned today, weeks
Does
after
calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct?
We have a problem of affordability and cost, spiraling student loans. We have a groupthink emerging, and that warps the entire academic enterprise.
I experimented with putting my lectures online and found that I could reach far more people at very low cost than I could at the university. And I thought, well, why not scale that? what I'm hoping to do is to find the best lecturers in the world and to bring them to as wide as possible an audience.
He came to me and he basically said, I want you to do the best course that you've always wanted to do.
We want to bring you the highest quality education possible at the lowest possible price.
It's extremely high-level content that anybody can use to educate themselves, and it's available to everybody.
Well, that would be good. I think it's funny, because I got canceled at the university, so I could try to return the favor.
I think they're doing that to themselves, right?
Yeah, well, we couldn't have a better marketing campaign than the universities themselves.
It's similar to what's going on with mainstream media.
Yeah.
It really is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, well, it all derives from the same source, right? Is the capture of higher education by this God-forsaken ideology that's...
bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre how successful it is. And how many people just are compliant.
Yeah.
It's
That's
very
for
strange.
sure. That's for sure.
Got someone sneaking up
Yeah,
on
well...
us.
Do you see it turning around, though? It seems like it is a little.
You move pretty cool.
Seems like more people are pushing back against it now than ever.
When you have institutions that are thoroughly captured, it's very difficult to retrieve them. You know, we've been arguing about this. I've been arguing about this
Fine,
with my team for
my
Peterson
hunt,
Academy. I mean,
and you're dead.
Is it possible to rejuvenate the bricks and mortars institutions of the higher education? And well, one answer to that is
but that comes later.
Things that are dead
Boots
rot,
first.
and the universities
what's
seem to be
coming to
rotting everywhere. And maybe that's because they're dead. Maybe it's because their time has come. And it could be that that's the case. I mean, I hope not.
Deep-known slave.
I loved working
with
at
the rest
Harvard
of
in
our
particular. It was an amazing institution. I had a very good time at McGill. I had a good time at the University of Toronto. It's a real pain to see these institutions degenerate. But they're ideologically captured. That's not good, and thoroughly. And it's a very rotten ideology. It's the spirit of Cain, the resentful spirit of Cain. It's not good. They're unbelievably expensive. They take terrible advantage of their students. Plus, the average quality of the educational experience is actually very low at most places, not everywhere. Hillsdale College, I think, is a marked exception. But most places, the lecturers aren't good. And we're in a situation now, it's kind of like what happened with YouTube in a way. You know, YouTube enabled you, for example, and Spotify as well, to emerge as an independent commentator. And, you know, you've cornered the market in some ways on that. There's no reason the universities could have seen this coming 20 years ago. They could have found their best lecturers, and they could have filmed their courses in the highest possible quality manner and taken advantage of this new communication technology. And they didn't. And that's not a good sign. You know, it's so funny, we bring our professors down to Miami, you know, professors from Oxford and Cambridge, and they're so relieved to come there. And the reason they're relieved to come there is because they're treated badly by their own institutions, these great professors. They're treated with contempt. They're paid miserably. That's especially the case in the UK. All we have to do is appreciate them. I tell the professors who come to Peterson Academy, like, here's the deal. You can say exactly what you want, in exactly the way you want. You can teach what you love. We'll put a studio audience together that actually wants to listen to you. That's the only reason they're there. We'll offer you a financial deal that's better than you can get with any book. We'll give you more reach than you could ever also hope to get with any published manuscript. You can bring what you know to the world for next to nothing. We figure we can offer a university quality, high-level university quality equivalent for about $2,000 over 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we have a great social media platform. So, I don't know, you tell me what you think about this. So, we've been wrestling with price, right? Because pricing something is very difficult. And part of the problem with social media platforms is that they're free. And you might say, well, that's not a problem. It's like, it is a problem because things that are free get overrun by parasites instantly. And so, you get the trolls, you get the bots, you get the bad corporate actors, you get the scam artists, because there's no barrier to their participation.
Right.
And so we put a $450 cost on our offering per year for the early adopters. That's available now. And we're hoping that the fact that there has to be a bit of a financial sacrifice on the front end will make our social media network high quality and clean. because there's a little bit of skin in the game to participate. So we've taken the best elements of the popular social media networks and amalgamated that, and we're hoping that we can produce a community of people who are responsible and achievement-oriented and upward-striving and intellectually curious, and bring them together so they can form their own communities as well as participating in the lectures. And so I'm extremely excited about this. The courses, we got lucky too, because we set up a production studio in Miami, and we have state-of-the-art film crew, but just when we started to film, the AI illustration capacity came online, and we filmed everyone against a background. And so we can fill the whole background with imagery and graphs and comments. Can you run a trailer for, just pick one of the courses at random, because this is actually how the courses look. So the trailers are very tightly edited, but so are the courses. And so let me show you one of them so you get a sense of what we've managed to accomplish.
As this wizard's not home, I say we take a peek.
Lot of fascinating questions. Where do we come from? Where are we going? What is the universe made of? How can we possibly understand the grand landscape of the cosmos? When you look back in space, you look back in time. It's amazing we've been able to do this, to study the properties of the cosmos, timescales of billions of years, size scales billions of times bigger than our own. And now the question is, can we go back to time equals 0? Can we go back to before time equals 0? And what does that even mean? I hope in this course to keep striving and asking these great questions, because without great questions, there can be no great answers. And without great answers, there can be no understanding.
Wow. Brian Keating.
Let's see.
Yeah, well, and I was so happy when I saw the trailers. You know, Michaela and her husband, Jordan Fuller, they've been working very diligently on this for about 3 years, and they basically built it from scratch, you know. And I didn't have any idea how the courses look, you know, because that's actually a pretty difficult thing to pull off. But I'm very happy with the trailers. They're extremely engaging. Every course has its own style sheet, so each course has its, there's an overarching style to the platform, but every single course has its own illustration, ethos, and quality. Yeah, well, you can see them.
Now, would you be, is this just for personal education, or will you be giving degrees?
We're going to approach that in 2 ways. So we'll offer certification at different time spans. So, you know, generally it takes you 4 years to get a degree, but you could imagine that it would be useful to have a 1-year certificate, a 2-year certificate, a 3-year certificate, a 4-year certificate. There's no compelling reason why it has to be 4 years. We'll keep very detailed records of our students' academic progress, and they'll be able to offer them directly to employers. So we want to be able to assure employers that anybody who's gone through the certification process that's part and parcel of Peterson Academy has done the work and met the standards, and the standards will be high. Now, simultaneously, we're working on technical accreditation, right, so that we can pull this, have this operate as a standard university. Now, there's trade-offs on that, because the accreditation processes themselves are captured by the same forces that have captured the universities, and we're not going to compromise the quality of the offerings by kowtowing to accreditation processes that are producing the same problem that we're trying to address.
Right.
Now, I'm in discussion with a number of different jurisdictions to move accreditation forward, and if that happens, it can only be applied retroactively. So if we can figure out how to do it with an administration or a jurisdiction that's willing to do it, and we don't have to compromise the quality, then we'll go the classic accreditation route. Otherwise, I'm just going to go directly to employers and say, look, we're going to be very, very careful about who we grant certification to. And you'll be able to rely on the certification from Peterson Academy as an indication of intellectual ability and also work ethic. And we'll document that by the record-keeping process that we use as part and parcel of the platform. So I think we can do it. We're going to do it one way or another.
How are you going to be able to assure that these students, because it's all remote, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to be able to assure that they're actually doing the work, that they're not utilizing AI? Are you going to have them write?
I can't tell you how. We are going to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, look, I tested tens of thousands of people online. So I set up an online testing service that was used primarily by a company called the Founder Institute, and we tested 50,000 people, 60,000 people over 5 years in about 7 different languages, and we built and developed technology to capture people who are cheating. So they don't know how we're capturing them, and I'm not going to tell you, but we know how to do it. And and that's obviously a problem, but it isn't an insoluble problem, and I think we've already solved it. So, and then once we move towards more formal and stable accreditation, there are lots of companies have emerged as a consequence of the COVID lockdowns to make sure that remote compliance with testing requirements can be achieved. So there's lots of ways to solve that problem. So
it's very exciting.
It's really exciting, and it's, there's all sorts of weird possibilities that emerge from this too, because the technology now exists, and we've had some of the videos converted already to have the lectures translated into the world's major languages, and the technology that's cutting edge uses the professor's voice and intonation in the second language and matches the mouth movements to the language.
Yeah, they're going to do that at Spotify.
Yeah, it's seamless, man. It's seamless.
They're doing it with podcasts. I think they're initially going to do Spanish, German, and French. I believe those are the first 3 languages, but they eventually will scale out.
Yeah. So that's just
Which
just
is incredible.
There. It is unbelievable.
Have someone teach a lecture in Russian and actually make the mouth movements and everything.
Well, it's extremely exciting, especially in regard to the developing world, because there's there'll be more people in Nigeria by 2100 than in China, and the median age of African is 19. So there's an immense opportunity in the developing world to capture the market for higher education, and it would be a wonderful thing to be able to bring this to the world, and I just can't see why not. The courses are very efficiently taught. We have AI-mediated testing services, and we can use the tests themselves as educational tools. So imagine you have a test, you get a question wrong, and you get feedback that it's wrong, and it'll tell you where in the lecture or in the reading material that you made the mistake, so you can go back and review. And so even the testing itself will be educational. And we're hoping to develop a community that is composed of people who want to engage in lifelong learning. It also means that you don't have to be like 18, 22 to attend this university. You can stay a part of it for the rest of your life. And we're hoping that spontaneous communities will develop and that we can bring people together for conventions. So, if we can get enough people on the platform, we'll have conventions in different cities where we bring our lecturers, to a stadium or to a theater for a weekend, and everybody who's part of the university can come and listen to their favorite lecturers. And we've got educational institutions who are already interested in partnering in that regard so that they can be brought to their institution for summertime 3-day courses. And it's so fun too, because we can use video and audio, and that's a wonderful thing as well, because as you know well, far more people can listen and watch than can read. Now, you have to read to partake in our courses as well, but it's a great opportunity. And it's so fun to have the professors come down there and be thrilled about it. We want the professors we already have to teach multiple courses because they're very good lecturers, and they've I think all, without exception, enthusiastically agreed to continue participating because the idiot off them. It's like, teach what you want to the people who want to listen. No holds barred. It's so fun. It's so fun.
With the state of higher education the way it is today, how does it recover? Or does it just get replaced?
Well, I guess what I'm hoping at least the Peterson Academy will do with the production quality of our courses is up the ante. It's like, even if we go financially, because we don't know how to price this, how the hell do you figure out something like that? We've argued about it a lot, and we don't know what the potential financial market might be. But at minimum, we'll be able to launch the courses independently if the platform itself doesn't take off. We're going to show Harvard and Stanford and Oxford and Cambridge what's possible with regards to lecturing with the new technology. I mean, they're stuck in like 1860.
Right.
And with these online large courses that places like MIT, for example, have launched, basically all they do is put up a camera and videotape a lecture. It's like, you can't do that. That's YouTube and the technologies that allow for the dissemination of video. They have their own they're their own medium, right? The medium is the message. You have to use the bloody technology. You can't stay stuck a century back, which is why we've done tight edits and filled in the backgrounds with images, and there's just no reason that that can't be everywhere.
Right.
So, and why would you pay? Look, people probably pay $300,000 for an Ivy League education, because that's where they meet their wife or their husband, when it comes down to it.
Is that really what it is?
Well, Joe, look, you never know what an institution is doing. Okay, so what does a university do? Lectures, accreditation. Okay, but that's not all. It gives you an identity for 4 years while you sort your life out. It gives you an opportunity to mature away from your parents. It gives you the opportunity to build a new network of peers. Not only living peers, but peers in the historical tradition. And it gives you an opportunity to meet the person that you might be with for the rest of your life. That's a big deal, and it's a selective opportunity because you bring bright kids together who are hard work and they get a chance to meet each other. That might be the whole value of an Ivy League education. It's hard to specify these things. Now, we're trying to replicate that on Peterson Academy with the social media side. And, you know, that's a new technology. We don't know how it'll work. But the fact that it's selective and it won't be full of trolls and bad corporate actors should mean that people will build social networks that are of high value. Because that's one of the things, obviously, that's what you do in a bloody MBA program. You know, it's not what you learn at an MBA program, value of the degree. It's the fact that it was bloody difficult to get in because the GMAT is an IQ test, essentially, and the social network you build in the MBA program. You carry that with you. Well, we're doing what we can to replicate that online. And we're going to make sure that we offer potential employers a record of our students' progress and success so that they have some sense that the person who they hire has done the apprenticeship work on their own necessary to accredit them as a, say, a valid student and a hard worker. And I think we can do that. And I think we can do it differently than universities do it. I know how to measure these things.
It's going to be very interesting if that becomes a criteria in which people are hired. You know, if it really does become a thing and it becomes something where people are accepting that as an education and seeking people out in that regard, it's going to be very interesting to see if more of those emerge. If you start a trend and then...
Well, at minimum, we can assure a potential employer of two things. We didn't attract a woke crowd, and we didn't indoctrinate our bloody students. So that's not a bad minimum. You know, you can assure intelligence, you can assure a work ethic because they've completed the course material and properly. We can ensure that's properly measured. But we can also say, here's a bunch of things they didn't learn. Right? And the courses are subversive in the most traditional possible way. So we have Larry Arnn, for example, who's the president of Hillsdale. He did a lecture series on Churchill. Now, where are you going to go to university to get a lecture series on Churchill? Arnn was Churchill's primary biographer, one of his primary biographers, so that's a big deal. You know, we've got Nigel Baker from Oxbridge lecturing on the legacy of UK colonialism. Well, you're not going to get that anywhere else. And he's a great lecturer, and he's a brilliant man and very, very courageous. And Larry Arnn is in exactly the same category. So the technology we're using is revolutionary in a variety of different ways. The lectures are high quality, but the whole ethos of the educational offering is completely different than what is on offer, say, at the typical Ivy League. Harvard, for example, which is such a catastrophe. Like, I was there at Harvard in the 1990s. I loved that place. It was really forward-looking and aimed at excellence, with very minor exceptions, like truly minor exceptions. It was a powerhouse, man. And I went back and saw a bunch of my old professor friends a month ago, you know, and they've all joined free speech movement at Harvard, and they're fighting against their own administration. And these were like the best professors I ever met in my life. And that's what they've been reduced to.
When did it start? The
Specifically
decay.
In the universities?
Yes.
Better get to
it started with the incursion of, what would you say, a modified Marxism in the 1960s and then really accelerated in the 70s. It sort of went like this. You know how things fail? Gradually, then suddenly. And it hit critical mass in terms of failure probably around 2014, 15, pretty much when things blew up around me. That's why they blew up around me. You know, I mean,
And
it
what
was
do you
so
think
ridiculous.
ultimately caused it to not course correct? What do you think ultimately caused these universities to give in to that?
Okay, let's talk about ultimate. So
Yeah.
let me tell you a story, an old story. So there's a myth from Mesopotamia called the Enuma Elish, which is one of the oldest stories that we
Might as well
have.
take a look.
And let me just lay out the story, because these ancient myths capture the fundamental dynamics of culture. They're winnowed to do that. Okay, so the Mesopotamians believed that the world emerged as the interaction of two forces. We already alluded to them, chaos and order. They had a god of order, Apsu. He was a male god. He's the patriarchy. You can think of Apsu as the patriarchy. And a female god, Tiamat. Tiamat is a dragon, and a dragon of chaos. And the word Tiamat is the same word etymologically as the word tohu vabohu, and that's the chaos that God makes the world out of at the beginning of time in the Hebrew accounts. Okay, so you have Apsu and Tiamat, and they come together. Chaos and order come
Disc is
together,
formed from
and they produce
slate
the first
and
world.
engraved with
And in the
Githyanki
Mesopotamian
writing. You examine
account
them
of things,
closely,
that's a world of
but can't
higher
make
order
easy
gods.
decipher you
Now
found.
those
You might
higher
be
order
able to
gods
reveal the disc's meaning.
forget their ancestors and go about their business, and they get increasingly fractious and undisciplined
as you gave the
and
Prince of the
noisy
Comet
and
part 1.
hedonistic
So it
and
was
immature.
that we Gith
And at one
travelled
point they kill their
lives that
father,
Gith had nurtured a
Apsu,
son.
and they try to
Orpheus,
live
Prince of the
on
Comet,
his corpse.
the true heir.
Right.
He
So
knew
you see an
Orpheus
echo of
rallied
this. It's
Gith's
very
honor guard
complicated.
and
You see an
declared the
echo of
throne
this
for
in the story of
himself.
Pinocchio. You know, there's a scene in
It's an
Pinocchio where Geppetto
intriguing
ends up in
tale.
the body of a whale.
And a forbidden one,
Okay, so
given
here's
how
the
expertly
underlying
it was
biological
encoded.
dynamic.
Maisel will
It's
surely
so
want to
remarkable.
know of this.
So imagine a society sets itself up according to a set of principles, and it stores, it creates a giant storehouse of wealth. Okay, that's what a carcass is, right? So if you're a primordial herder, your wealth is in the bodies of your herd animals. Okay, a body is a symbol of stored wealth. In the Mesopotamian pantheon, the careless kill their father and live on its corpse. Okay, that's what's happened to the universities. So since World War II, the West has gathered huge storehouses of value everywhere. Harvard's a great example. Immense endowment. Remarkably valuable brand. Disney's another example. And what's happened is, and this happens all the time, if you have an unguarded storehouse of value, the parasites come marching in. Right, and they try to live on the corpse. Now, they can for a while because it's a storehouse of value, but they kill the spirit. Now, what happens in the Mesopotamian story is that chaos itself comes flooding back in the form of Tiamat, who's extremely, the goddess of chaos, who's extremely angry that her husband has been sacrificed by the careless denizens of the world. That's the death of God. So, yeah, and the savior emerges in the Mesopotamian story. It's so interesting. So the savior that emerges to set things right has eyes all the way around his head. So he pays attention, and he speaks magic words. That's Marduk. And so the Mesopotamian Empire was an avatar of Marduk, and he's the spirit of responsibility that sets the world right. Okay, so what are we seeing? We're seeing the invasion of storehouses of wealth by the parasites, fundamentally. Has that killed them? I can't think through how you would rescue an institution, a typical upper-level university institution. What are you going to do? How are you going to do that? You're going to fire 80% of the people? Who's going to do that?
Right.
No one's going to do that. Now, you could say, well, we'll make DEI initiatives forbidden. They're kind of doing that in Florida. But all you do is change the words.
Nothing. Why is it barely
I mean, that's
above
what the postmodernists did with Marxism in the 1970s when it no longer was fashionable to worship
Button
Stalin.
does nothing.
After everybody
Why is it barely above the
realized
floor?
that he was
strange.
Psychopathic
Must have had
murderer.
it used once. But was
All
it
that
worth
happened was
reaching
the
so
French
far
intellectuals
down
changed
for?
the terminology, and they invented a form of Marxism that was even worse than Marxism, which was really quite the bloody achievement. Do I think they can be rejuvenated? I can't see how.
Well, when you have people like the president of Harvard that gets fired for plagiarism but maintains the exact same salary in a different job,
Yeah, as if demotion to a full Harvard professor was, well, you know, she's not suitable to be president, but she can still be a fully tenured professor at Harvard. It's really, she can, eh? With that publication record. I just interviewed Carol Swain. Do you know who Carol Swain is? No. Black law professor from whom Gay plagiarized much of her work. Yeah, fun. So what do you do with an institution that's that far gone? You saw what those university professors did at Congress, and they thought they were right. They didn't even look put upon. They looked put upon and shocked when they were challenged by the congressman.
Because they're not accustomed to being questioned, and also to communicating outside of their bubble, in their bubble, where their opinion is held in high esteem.
Yes, and everyone else is an idiot as far as they're concerned.
Well, when the woman from Penn, when she was smiling, every time she was answering these questions,
it was. I'd never seen anything like that. Like, I knew that the universities had become warped, and the warp is very deep. So I talked about the Mesopotamian story, and there's another angle of deep warping. So the spirit of Marx is a very old spirit. It was alive in the French Revolution. It was alive in the Soviet Revolution.
I love poetry.
You can trace it all the way back to the story of Cain and Abel, as far as I'm concerned. And the story of Cain and Abel is the story of the fundamental human dynamic after the fall of man. So, insofar as we're historical creatures, the story of Cain and Abel lays out the essential psychological conflict that characterizes human beings. And so you have Cain on the one side. So Cain doesn't bring his best to the table. He makes second-rate offerings and lies about it. And then they're not accepted by him or his fellow man or women or by society or by God, and that makes him bitter. And instead of learning, he takes his complaints to God and he says something like, well, what the hell's going on here? I'm breaking myself in half, making my sacrificial offerings, and everything's being rejected. What kind of stupid cosmos did you produce? And God says to him something very interesting and complicated. He says something like, you're blaming your bitterness on your failure, and you have failed, and you know it, and you didn't have to, but it isn't your failure that's making you bitter. You've invited something in to inhabit you that's turned you against yourself and what's good.
Don't get me wrong.
He says to him, sin crouches at your door like a sexually aroused predatory animal, and you invited it in to have its way with you. And there's a sexual metaphor there. Oh yeah.
That's heavy.
It's rough, man. It's rough. You don't get to be a high school shooter till you've had 1,000 hours of brooding over your misery. And so that's what God tells Cain. And that makes him violently angry and murderous. And so he kills Abel. He kills his own ideal. And Abel, you have Cain, who makes poor sacrifices and whines about it. He's the perennial victim, shaking his fist at God and the world, refusing to learn from his experiences. And he becomes, and you have Abel, who makes the right sacrifices and aims upward. That's the pattern. Two spirits. That's the Joker and Batman. That's Lex Luthor and Superman. That's Voldemort and Harry Potter. It's Satan and Christ. Like it's this eternal recurrent pattern. And one of its manifestations is Marxism, and another one of its manifestations is postmodernism. And so this is a very old story. It's a very old story. And you can understand Cain's point, because people do break themselves in half in life trying to struggle forward, and they're not successes in their own eyes, and they're rejected by other people. It undermines their faith in being itself. You can understand that, but you're called upon to bring your best to the table no matter what happens to you, and to maintain your faith and your courage, and to aim up. There's no excuses. Your past trauma, there's no excuses. Doesn't matter what it is. And so there's this battle, and what's happened in the universities is the universities have been captured by the resentful spirit of Cain. And so it's all flowered up with postmodern language. There's no ultimate unity. That's the claim of the postmodernists. There's no overarching narrative. It's like, that's what the postmodernists claim, skepticism with regards to meta-narratives. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? You mean that everything culminates in disunity? That's your theory of being? So how the hell do we come together as a society then? And around what? Well, everyone goes their own way. Yeah, that's called war. So is there a higher unity in which everything participates or not? Well, the postmodernists is like, no. Have it your way. Nihilism, disunity, anxiety, hopelessness, social disintegration, conflict. That's that pathway. And that's just where it starts. That's the optimistic view. So we're trying to present at Peterson Academy and in the other enterprises that I'm engaged in, we're trying to present a unified underlying vision and a traditional unifying underlying vision. And I think that it's understandable, what we talked about in the first part of this interview. Like, once you understand that sacrifice is the basis of community, and once you understand that there's a ultimate form of sacrifice, and that's what's demanded of you if you're going to strive upward, then the contours of the religious story that undergirds the West fall into place. And that's a very remarkable thing to observe, and I think that's going to happen. I think we're at the end of the Enlightenment, and something new is striving mightily to emerge.
Well, it's also interesting that these higher education institutes, even though they do have, the way you're describing, they're extremely wealthy. They're extremely valuable. The name brand to them is still extremely potent. They have so many things going against them in terms of like an objective analysis of what's good for your education and what's good for preparing for your future. And then on top of that, they're burdened with this insane financial problem. The insane problem of, first of all, student loans being something you never get out of.
Indentured servitude.
Yeah. And the fact that we all know that the human frontal lobe, especially on males, doesn't even fully develop until you're 25. So you're kind of taking advantage of a developing mind and locking them into an insane burden of debt.
And ideology.
And so you're strapped with debt, so you must work. And then you must work within these structures that have been infected by this ideology, because everyone's coming out of the universities into those places, into those businesses and corporations, and they're deeper and deeper interwoven into the structure of these businesses to the point where they're inescapable. And then you can't leave because you have financial burdens. You have all the student loan debt to pay off.
Right.
Something is an alternative to that, if it can become effective to the term, like if people can get employment. It's interesting, like,
well, as soon as we determine the accreditation route, like I said, I'm in active communication with a number of people who are interested in accreditation, but I have to figure out if that's the right route. If it isn't, I'm going to work directly with interested employers to make sure that what our students obtain as a consequence of going through the Peterson Academy process is recognized by them as a marker of a high-quality applicant.
Yes.
And I know that problem is solvable because I know how to do that.
Well, there's a lot of employers now that are kind of discounting the ideas of degrees. And Elon is a big one of them. There's
absolutely.
There's quite a few people that you shouldn't dismiss someone as being qualified for a certain position just because they've gone through some very formal process.
Not if the formal process isn't predicated on general cognitive ability and conscientiousness.
Right. If it's predicated on bullshit and grift, which a lot of it is.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen with society in general with the implementation of AI and the inevitable erosion of jobs?
I don't know if the erosion of jobs is inevitable.
No.
Well, we've thought that before. Well, first of all, the first thing I would say is, like, all bets are off. Right. All bets are off.
Right.
We're going to have hyper-intelligent AI within 5 years. In fact, we already have it. Well, I'm being pessimistic.
Right.
I've used ChatGPT and Grok and some systems that my colleagues have developed for. We built our own large language models in-house. So my colleague, Victor Swift, built a large language model for me, trained on my books. And I used it to help me write this next book. because I could come across biblical passages that I couldn't understand, and I could ask this AI system for a first pass interpretation, and it could do a good job. And we're going to release that along with the book. Yeah, so that was really something. And I'll tell you, ChatGPT and Grok were unbelievably useful as research assistants. So they're about as smart as high-end undergraduates. They lie a lot, and you have to corner them like mad to get them to provide you with information that's valid.
What have you found them lying about?
Oh, they make up references that don't exist. So, for example, for ChatGPT, about a quarter of the academic references it produces for you don't exist.
What?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't know. Like, it will produce a reference for you that's completely plausible, except that it doesn't exist. So, if I ask ChatGPT a question, it'll answer and it'll give me the references because I asked for the references. Then I have to go and look up all the references and read them, first of all, because you're supposed to read the things you refer to, but also I have to make sure that it's not, wandered off into some hallucinatory pathway. But that'll be taken care of in no time flat, as far as I'm concerned, and Musk has already got plans to do that. So what will the addition of these AI systems mean to us? God. Well, I talked to Elon about this when we had our interview, and it's going to depend to some degree, Joe, on how we train the damn things. So there's this problem called the alignment problem. That's how the engineers describe it, which is how do we know that these AI systems will have human interest in mind? And you think, okay, how do we make machines that have human interests in mind? And then you think, oh, well, we have the same problem with adolescents. How do we ensure that we train our children so that they have their own interests and broad social interests in mind? And the answer always has been that you provide them with a classic religious and humanities education, because that provides an axis of stability around which all other knowledge can be organized. Now, the problem with the large language models at the moment is they're hyper-trained on modern text, and so they're ideologically addled and woke. And so we've been experimenting with training LLMs on a more classic basis. So we trained one on the King James Bible, and we haven't released it because I don't know what to think about it. It's like, you can ask the King James Bible a question. Like, what the hell does that mean?
Right.
Well, like, seriously, what does that mean? And before we release it, we also want to make sure that we have it. We've developed the underlying technology properly. Okay, so what's the answer to your question?
Take you first.
What AI will do will depend on the intent of the people who design it. Here's a terrifying thing. You tell me what you think about this.
Okay.
All right, so your thoughts are orienting phenomena. So you think so that you can lay out a pathway to a desired destination. And then you can evaluate the thought to see if that's a good strategy to get there. Okay, so there's an implication that comes along with that.
Under your feet juts upwards, forming
a thought enters the theater of your imagination in relationship to your goal. So you can formulate that in religious language. The spirit that answers your prayers, the nature of the spirit that answers your prayers will be dependent on the nature of your prayer. Yeah, that's for sure. Right. Yeah. So imagine that you're harboring feelings of resentment and bitterness as you're plotting your economic pathway forward. And so you're trying to think about what you should do, but you have the spirit of resentment and bitterness sitting on your shoulder. The thoughts that enter your mind are going to be a consequence of your possession by that bitterness to the degree that you've allowed it to shape your goal. So here's a corollary of that. This is stunning. It's a stunning thing to understand. If you orient your aim upward in the highest manner, the spirit that informs your thought will be the spirit of the highest possible aim. And God, that's something to know, man. So that's what a religious practice, a fundamental religious practice is for. It's like, get rid of the corrupt motivation. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Pray for the salvation of your soul, that you're aiming right, because your aim is going to determine the content of your thoughts. And that is how it works technically. That's how it works neuropsychologically. Your thoughts are the handmaiden of your aim.
Right, which is why we're always worried about sociopaths, because they never abandoned that corrupt motivation.
Yeah, well, they're basically, the best way to think about the narcissists and the hedonists and the histrionic types and the borderlines and the antisocial personalities is that they never matured cortically. So, like, children come into the world in a way as a bundle of competing subcortical motivations, right? And they're very powerful motivations. Anger, for example, you watch a 2-year-old have a temper tantrum, it's quite the show. And they want short-term immediate gratification. Now, what happens as your cortex matures, you transcend those lower order instinctual motivations, that would be the Freudian id, and you start to regulate your behavior in relationship to your own future, so you stop doing stupid, pleasurable things in the moment that will compromise you, and you start to be able to incorporate the views of other people. That's how kids at 3 start to develop the ability to have friends. And the more sophisticated you get, the more other people and their perspectives are part of your perceptions, and the more the future is taken into account in your actions. And the cortex is actually there so that that can happen. And it has to happen in a social context because you have to pick up the society of your peers, obviously. And so conditions like psychopathy, or even power seeking for that matter, are conditions of radical immaturity. And so that's how you explain their emergence. And one of the things that's interesting about that is it provides a very powerful argument against moral relativism. It's like there's a real difference between maturation and immaturity. Maturation is productive and sustainable, and immaturity is divisive and destructive. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And so, see, it's a different view of mental health, because the classic therapist-produced view of mental health is that mental health is sort of inside you. You know, it's in your psyche, it's in your mind. But it's not. Like, your mental health is the harmony of your existence in relationship to the future and other people. Right? And that sense of well-being that can infuse you if you get the balance right isn't a reflection of the proper structuring of your function of your mind or your brain. It's a phenomena that emerges when everything is in its proper place and operating harmoniously. That's what you experience in music. Like, music represents that. Everything in its proper place. That's what Adam is called upon by God to do in the story of Adam and Eve. To subdue the world. Subdue. Everything in its proper place so that the whole structure operates in a harmonious manner. It's a much more expanded view of what constitutes mental health. Anyways, education should serve that, right? And so if you take the staff of Moses that's planted in a single place, the community grows around that. That's the same as the magic wand of Gandalf. That idea of a magic wand. It's the traditional ethos associated with transformation and sacrifice around which communities aggregate themselves. And a proper humanities and religious education inculcates that center structure so that knowledge can be organized around it. The last time we talked, I suggested to you that we see the world through a biblical lens. Literally see it. I mean, literally. It structures our perceptions. And I've investigated that far more deeply. And what seems to be the case with a corpus of stories like the biblical library is that if you know the stories, it structures your psyche so that you have a place to put information. And so that enables you to understand the current world and everything that's happening, but to place everything in the right context. And so the transmission of an unbroken cultural edifice, story-based edifice, is the manner in which you solve the alignment problem, unite your society, integrate your psyche, pursue what's meaningful, and protect yourself from chaos and anxiety. So, and a solid education has been the traditional way of ensuring that occurs. And so, well, that's what we hope we can offer with Peterson Academy. That's the purpose of my books as well, to elucidate that. And so, can the universities do that? I don't think so.
I don't know if they have
so
that.
Much for peace.
That philosophy, the philosophy and the way you're laying it out resonates with me. I think it's accurate. I think when I'm in harmony in my life, it all seems to make sense. It all works together. What you're saying, it just rings true. I don't know if they're so infected with this ideology that flies in the face.
They've rejected it wholeheartedly.
Yes.
Look, the premise of the postmodernists is that there's no uniting meta-narrative. If you had to define postmodernism in one phrase, that would be it. And so what have they done? Here's the association with Marxism. Okay, so the Marxists have a counter-narrative. It's the narrative of power. And it is a very powerful counter-narrative, because if you don't put the proper uniting principle at the pinnacle, its power emerges immediately, because people play power games. And you can attain a certain degree of success and a fair amount of domination by playing a power game. And so Marx observed that one of the cardinal power games is economic. And it is probably the cardinal power game, right? There's economic disparity. Those at the top do take advantage of their position at the top to stabilize their position. Like in a functional society, productive people are at the top. But even among those at the top, they're still power-seeking crooks. And so now Marx, of course, would say that, well, everyone who's economically successful is a power-seeking crook. And, you know, that's a great thing to believe if you're a resentful Satanist like Marx.
Well, it's how the losers look at the world.
Well, that's for sure. But there is some justification in it, because among the successful there are...
Yes.
Right, okay.
And a large percentage, because that's the culture in which they're existing.
Yeah, well, a dangerous percentage.
Yes.
And a critique of power is always a valid critique. Okay, so what the postmodernists did when Marxism became ethically unacceptable, and that happened in the 1970s, is they metastasized.
Looking ahead.
They said, okay, we've got a victim-victimizer narrative that's played out in the economic sphere, and that's basically Marxism. We'll just multiply that until the same interpretive framework can be applied to all possible group distinctions. That's basically intersectionality. So sex is a oppressor versus oppressed narrative. Gender is an oppressed versus oppressor narrative. Ethnicity, race,
One horn, the stink
ability,
of Avernus,
attractiveness, height,
Advocatus
any
diaboli.
qualitative distinction is now recast as a battle between oppressor and oppressed. It's an unbelievably brutal story. It's basically equivalent to the claim that
Karlach,
the spirit
the
of power
Archdevil
is the
Zariel's
ruler
gladiator.
of the cosmos.
How can they do all this
goes
and
to ash.
ignore the possibility of an oppressor, like a male, adopting the identity of the oppressed of a female,
not counting the fuckers that need a good hurting,
into female
well,
spaces
you can
and
see how
oppressing females.
you can see that it can't be dealt with because
right?
You'd
well,
cut a
that is
child's
wild.
throat just to taste
one of the
the
things
blood.
you see
a devil
that's very characteristic of the
I didn't
utopian
take the
left
blade for a
is the
fool.
absolute insistence that anyone oppressed is a victim.
Fire
It's like, okay, we'll give the devil his due. Some oppressed people are victims, but some people who claim to be oppressed aren't victims. They're the worst kind of monsters that the most deranged imagination could barely conceptualize. Utopian, naive, radical progressives refuse their imagination for evil, and that delivers them into the hands of the absolute bloody psychopaths.
I've tried to tell
right,
you.
and they just don't
I'm
see
not
it.
what you think
it's like,
I am.
oh,
Another
those trans
vision.
people,
Karlach's
they're just striving to be
blade
free.
rays
It's like,
slicing
you
through
wait
devils,
until you have one of them in your
as
house,
her eyes
buddy,
dart
and you're going to
around,
find out just
seeking
exactly
escape.
how naive
Will
you are.
shudders with
So-
Karlach's desperation. She is a victim.
So how do they
of the
protect
blood
themselves?
war,
They just deny
not
the
an
existence of
agent
malevolence
it.
or
By
attribute it
Baldur's
to
helm,
socioeconomic inequality.
I will not
All
be tricked.
criminals are victims.
You
It's like,
saw
no,
the truth.
first of all, lots of
I
people
may
who
be
are
an
victims aren't
effective
criminals.
soldier, but I
In fact,
never wanted to serve
poverty
Zarya.
does not cause
Legged it away
criminality.
from her the first
That's a
chance
lie,
I got.
and it's a very
And yet
damaging
you
lie to the
served.
poor. Because
Right.
if poverty was equivalent to criminality, the logical thing to do is just to lock up all the poor.
Right.
Right. Well, there are many pathways from poverty forward, and one of them is criminality. But you
Will
can say the same
catches
thing
his
about
breath
wealth.
and his lips straighten.
So the idea, and that's
Sheer
basically a
dread
Marxist
twists
theory of
his
causality.
face.
It's like,
No!
well, those
Devils
people's
cannot be
oppression is what's
trusted.
causing their lack of law-abiding what conduct. It's like, no, wrong, seriously wrong, and dangerously wrong, and ridiculously naive.
You know monsters
That's not how the
better
world
than
works at
anyone.
all.
Can't you
Right,
look
you're
in
also,
my eyes
in a
and
sense,
see
you're
I'm not a
encouraging
devil?
this kind of behavior
You
because
don't know
you're
what
not
this
punishing
means.
people for it.
You don't
because you're
know
saying
what
it's
you're
not their
asking me
fault.
to
Or
do.
you're even valorizing it. Oh, you
Asking
poor
you
thing.
to
Right, and
live
you're
at
allowing
will.
more of it to take place.
Don't
Well, we
wanna
know
hurt
that-
you. And to be frank,
So
I'd
the
rather
dark
not find
tetrad
out how the
types.
blade got his
So
name.
those are the subclinical
I swear to you, on all I am,
psychopaths.
I'm
Okay,
not
so they're
what you
psychopath.
think.
That makes them predatory
Shit.
and parasitic. That's the definition of a psychopath. Okay, they're narcissistic. So what does that mean?
Shit.
They want unearned social status.
You really
right?
are no
They're
devil, are you?
Machiavellian. So what does that mean? It means that
I've
their
been
use of
deceived.
language is subordinated to their demand
the
for
gods.
hedonistic gratification
Thought
and
I was
power.
gonna have to take
so
your
like
head.
you and I, in principle, we
You would have
hope
died in the
we're
attempt.
trying to pursue a
But
thread of
there have been enough
conversation that
threats
leads
today.
to further development,
then,
let's say,
eh?
for us and for the audience.
Aye.
But I could
Truths.
easily be in here thinking,
I
okay,
see
what the
the
hell
good
do
in
I
you,
have to
Karlach.
tell Joe to increase my
promise not to
social
lose sight
media
of it.
status?
Right.
Even
Right,
when
and
the
to play
hells burn
this
hottest.
situation as a game to enhance my own status or to further my selfish desires. That's Machiavellian. That was the dark triad. And what further investigation revealed that you had to add an additional
Glad Will
dimension
saw
to that
sense.
to fully flesh
Even
out
more
the
glad
picture.
he decided to stick
Sadism.
around. Takes
What's
a pretty
that?
slick mover
Positive
to track
delight
down
in
old
the
Karlach.
unnecessary misery of others. That's the dark tetrad types.
Same.
Well,
Now,
dark
instead of a
tetrad types
liability,
portray
I've got
themselves
a
as
friend.
victims.
Or
Right? That's one of their Machiavellian strategies. So now your question is, well, how do we segregate the real victims, so to speak, from the false victims? And one of the
Because
answers
they
to
set
that
up
is
you
like,
up here.
beware of those
I'll
who
just
claim
make myself
victimization
comfortable.
as a justification for their moral, what would you say, for their moral transgressions. I did this because I'm a victim. It's like,
Right.
really?
Right.
Really? That was your
You
reason?
won't find a more
Poor
learned
you.
opinion on
That's
this
your
matter,
story.
I assure you.
You monster.
You only have a matter of days
There
to
are no
live.
monsters. It's like, if you think there are no monsters, you're naive and willfully blind to the point of delusion and what would you call it? What do they say? There are none so blind as those who will not see. That certainly applies on the malevolent side.
And then, from the point of view,
He sees the
if you're
burning
looking at
embers of
the
what
people
he
that are committing
Hells.
crimes, there's the unfortunate
Raven Guard's
reality
been
that people
taken.
mimic their environment. And if
Then
you
we
grow
need to
up
seek
in
him
an
out and get him to
environment where there
safety.
are no positive role
I know
models
I
and you
haven't
see
said
nothing but rampant crime
our
around
relation
you,
was no matter
even
of
good
pride,
people go down
least for
bad
him.
paths.
You get, okay, so antisocial personality is somewhat
Thank
heritable.
you.
There is
That
some
means
familial
what
transmission.
Makes a Jew? No, his he could
there
be
is a
all the
role
more
played by
reason to find him.
fatherlessness in particular.
The absolute who
And
sees not
that's
just my
perhaps
father.
because
When I look- I
fatherless
see the-
boys
I see-
tend to
I
turn
wanted you to
towards
know
a
the
gang
blade,
orientation,
not
and
the
the
shadow
gangs
he
of
left
adolescence have a short-term time horizon, so they future discount badly, and that produces a proclivity for short-term gratification, and that includes like idiot criminal behavior.
Right.
Yeah. So what you need in a
You wish to
father, you
speak?
need someone who encourages
It's had the whole
intelligent,
region of
upward
those who
aiming
remained
sacrifice
our
and an
shadow
orientation
cast. We
towards
have to
others
get
and
to
future
Moonrise.
development.
But the
Like, that's
less
what the
time we
spirit of the
spent,
father really
precious
does.
little.
Is that
But I'm
encouragement.
quite certain
So-
I help if I
and
can
that
join you and
what
get close to
reward
Moonrise.
for
Well,
delay of gratification.
There's hardly
So that's another
anyone left to
indication of
share
the
the
relationship between,
responsibility
say,
with. Well, I studied
upward
the shadow
striving
curse for
moral
years.
orientation
But
and
to
maturity.
perhaps
If you're mature,
put
you
it
can
from your
delay
mind for now.
gratification. And what
Once
does
we
that
near
mean?
the
It means
curse,
you've integrated the
but
future
in
into
my
your
eagerness,
perception.
I put far too much faith
Right,
in
and that
the
has to be
ability
socially
in other circumstances.
scaffolded, especially for
I
men.
would have done the same. A bad
Women,
impression.
they get initiated by nature.
With such stimulating company.
In every society that we know of, men have to be initiated. Right.
Hope you're keeping
Right,
well,
because
friend.
that catalyzation of maturity is a difficult thing.
Master,
Difficult
friend.
and unlikely, but
I stayed with. I'll
but
never
possible
forget
and
him.
necessary.
But I'm glad to have met you.
So how do you reach the people that are young adolescents that are trapped in that vicious cycle?
Yeah. Well, I think I can tell you the answer to that. You know, a lot of young men have
Seems like
been
Will and
watching and
Karlach will
listening
play
to the
nice
sorts
from
of
now
things
on.
that I've been writing about
Saves
and
us having to
producing.
pick
And
sides.
every time someone comes up to me and tells me that reading, say, 12 Rules for Life had helped them, I ask why. It's like, okay, good. What changed? And the overwhelming pattern of
Good
response
thing for Will
is something
that
like,
Carlac called a
I started
truce.
to understand the
A
necessity of
tiefling that
responsibility.
mighty would shred
Now,
him to pieces and burn
you might
the
then ask,
remains.
well, you hear
No.
from your parents, in principle, you hear from the school system,
disc
although that's
appears
probably
in your
gone, that,
mind.
you
Jason
should grow up and be
markings.
responsible.
Ancient.
Why did
The
it make a
texts are
difference?
enciphered, but I've solved
Why
the
did it
pattern.
make a difference
Your
to
head
you to
buzzes
read that in what I
concert with
wrote?
Lascelles.
And the answer
But
is,
it
I
hardly
think the
matters.
answer is I didn't take the
Even
standard
without the
conservative
connection,
approach.
you'd recognize her as
I didn't say
all of it.
you should,
Gith
you
declared
must, you
Vlaakith
ought,
Queen of the Empire,
even though those
and
things
her
are
own
true.
son
I said there's
to
no
fight her.
difference between responsibility
Orpheus would
and
have
adventure.
ceded control to the Geich.
That's a killer thing to know.
She did nothing.
The
Thank you,
heavier
good
the
fortune,
responsibility, the more profound the adventure.
It is
And so
imperative
everyone
we
knows
locate a
that, but
crash.
it's not.
You
It's
do
not
well to
cataloged.
observe.
Right.
So
Yes,
I
that
just
your
watched The Hobbit a while
then
back,
have
classic
ceased
adventure
to
story, and of
exist.
course,
And a
what
mind flayer is
Bilbo,
born. Because I do not intend
to
to,
begin
let
with,
this happen.
Bilbo.
We must fuck
He's
the
this little
first
hobbit,
symptoms should have long
right?
since
Sounds like
started,
Abraham.
though.
He's living his comfortable
That
life,
is
and the
what
wizard comes
puzzles
along
me.
and says, "It's time for you to
Besides,
develop your shadow
what hasn't
side."
happened may
Of course,
yet
he
come to
becomes a
pass.
thief, and to
Mark
go
my
on your
words.
adventure.
This
And he
you
agrees
might
to do that, and
consume
it's
the
a
gate tadpoles
weighty
you
adventure.
wish.
He has to contend with the
I'm
ring
not
of
so
power.
craven.
Right, that's the ultimate in temptations. That's the temptation that Christ is offered by Satan in the desert, the temptation of power. And that's the temptation that Bilbo has to contend with. Well, he has this adventure. Well, what's the adventure? It's responsibility. He has to carry that ring. And it is one of the rings that unites everything, power.
And when it won't hit,
It's
my
just the
faith in
malevolent
Vlaakith
ring
will
that unites
guide me.
everything. And so I've been suggesting to young men in particular, it's like, you want to get your life together? Take the path of maximal responsibility. Not because you should, even though you should. That's not why. It's because that's the pathway of maximal adventure. So you say, well, what's the meaning of life? It's like, it's the meaning that reveals itself when you take the pathway of maximal responsibility. That's exactly the message of the crucifixion. That's precisely the message. Pathway of maximal responsibility. And that's a terrifying thing. There's no difference between that and the dragon and treasure stories that are, unbelievably archaic. The greatest possible treasure is to be found where the danger is most intense.
There's something I've been wanting
Always.
to share with you.
The dragon guards of
Now-
old.
Always.
It's
Right.
Well,
difficult
so
to
one
put
thing
into
to know
words.
is that if there's
Here's
a dragon,
the tadpole.
there's a treasure
connection.
somewhere. Really?
Come into my mind.
Right.
Really?
Right.
My family and I have really learned this in the last 6 years
I
because
don't
we were
remember how it
subject to
started.
continued
Only how it ended.
and what would assaults in the public sphere that were designed to be deadly. And
What do you mean by that? Designed to be
Interview-
deadly.
interviews with journalists in particular, snake journalists whose every single utterance is designed to entrap the person being interviewed into saying something that will devastate their reputation personally to enhance the status of the interviewer.
Like the Kathy Newman conversation.
Well, Kathy at least had a bit of a sense of humor, but
But
Helen-
the intent.
oh, yeah, the intent. That's the serpent,
Yeah.
man. That's the intent. It's like, well, Nellie Bowles, who interviewed me for the New York Times, now part of the Free Press, she admitted that. She said that her job at the New York Times, like the job of many of the reporters, was to find someone, demolish their reputation by any means necessary, and elevate their status in consequence. Wow. Yeah.
What a
She
terrible
asked my
job.
name.
Brutal.
So isn't
Can't
it
remember what I
terrifying that's the old gray
Remember
lady?
anything before those words?
That's the most trusted and respected
All I
source
know
of
is
news.
she saved my
And that
life.
their intent was just to
and gave me a
destroy.
new home.
Yeah, it's
It
quite
wasn't
something.
With
the
Lady
news.
Shah.
It wasn't real journalism. The nuanced, various
That's all I
elements
remember.
of what a human being is. The pros and cons, the goods, the bads, the ugly, the battle that they have.
Normally
Not
I'd
that.
agree.
No. Not an accurate
But with
assessment,
you,
not an objective analysis of the
getting
person.
easier by the
Just
Pursuit of status.
yeah.
Mhm. Well,
And
that's
the
part of that.
danger is that people know that now, and people know who's doing that now, and then they go after them, and you see that now.
Yep.
And journalists say, "Oh, it's attack on journalism."
Yeah,
like, no,
right.
you're not doing journalism. You're doing hit pieces, and you're doing it under the guise of journalism, but it's
Yeah.
not journalism. it's kind of evil.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, kind of.
I've seen quite a bit of it where I'm like, especially with people that I know the actual story and what was really going on behind the scenes, I was like, this is maddening. This is wild.
Well, we started to learn after this had happened 2 or 3 times, like there's a kind of a process, because you're exposed to that, and then there's an intermediary period where it looks like it might succeed. And that's very stressful.
Right.
That's usually when people come out with their apologies.
Right.
Because they're just terrified. They're going to lose, well, I did lose my job and I lost my clinical practice.
Right.
Right. So, like, the costs are real.
So your situation in Canada was that they wanted you to sign up for re-education.
Oh, no, that's already, that's the plan.
Right.
I couldn't sign up. They said already that I have to do that.
Right.
But we have an appeal in at the moment that's blocking it.
And this is all just what it affects is what in Canada? What is it?
If I don't undergo the re-education process successfully, they'll suspend my license and, well, also say why. They'll say, well, Dr. Peterson is uneducable. He's unprofessional. He's violated the tenets of his profession.
Right, just because you have a different perspective on things than they do.
No, it's because I'm actually telling the truth that clinicians bloody well know and are too cowardly to admit. So, they went after me for 4 reasons, probably. One of them was the entire transcript of the last conversation I had with you.
Whoops.
Right, that was submitted as a complaint because I was talking about the climate lies. They went after me because of the comments I've made about the trans butchers and liars, the surgeons and the therapists who are enabling them. That's a major part of it. That's a major part of it. They went after me because I went after Trudeau and his former chief of staff. And what else? Those are the major 3. There's probably 4 complaints aligned with each of those dimensions. And so that's cost me about $1 million in legal fees so far. So it's a very hard battle to fight. It's very annoying because the accusations continue to flow in, even though that's a choice of the college. And I've already been sentenced to re-education of indefinite duration, right, till they're satisfied that I've learned whatever the hell lesson I'm supposed to learn. So that the only reason that isn't happening is because we now have an appeal in front of the Supreme Court in Canada. And so I don't think it'll succeed, but we'll see.
Is it important to you to maintain your license, or is it important to you to win this?
It's important. There's 2 things that are important to me, likely. One is I'm not going to let a pack of ideologically addled moralists, lying moralists who are facilitating the butchery and sterilization of children take away my license, not without a war. So that's one thing. The second thing is I'm in a prime position in Canada to undertake this battle against the woke licensing boards because I have the money, and what the hell are they going to do to me? I'm not practicing. They can't take away my income, and likely they can't blacken my reputation except among those who are willing to assume that the licensing colleges are playing a straight game. So really, there's nothing they can do to me. Plus, if it was only a personal thing, apart from the fact that I'm not letting my license be taken by a pack of intellectually addled hypocrites, there's a part of me that's deeply ashamed to be a psychologist at the moment. I'm so appalled by my compatriots. They know that this gender dysphoria pathology is a lie. They all know it. And they won't say anything. Now, partly they won't say anything because the consequences for saying something are not trivial. But the consequences for not saying anything is that people like Chloe Cole end up with their breasts cut off when they're 15. Right, well, that actually matters. So practically speaking, in a sense, the battle doesn't mean anything to me because I'm fighting to remain a member of a club that I don't really want to be part of. But is there a principle at stake? Well, there's a variety of principles at stake. And so if I stop or lose,
with
all
your
of
keen
the woke
eyesight,
licensing
the hole below you soon plummets into an
enterprises,
abyss of impossible
they'll just have their
you'll call
sway.
echoes as it
All the
plunges
physicians in
downward.
Canada are terrified to say what they think. Anybody who's governed by a professional college, they censor themselves like mad. And it's really appalling for psychologists, because all of the psychologists who are properly trained, they know that all of this is a lie, and not just a lie, a malevolent, vicious, and destructive lie. Everything about it's a lie. You know, Musk revealed the other day that the professionals that were interacting with him in regard to his transitioning son told him that if he didn't abide by their dictates, that his son was much more likely to commit suicide. That's a lie. No one who's educated as a psychologist believes that to be true. No one. At minimum, if you're educated, what you understand is that underneath gender dysphoria is something more substantial, which is a proclivity towards depression and anxiety. If you're depressed and anxious, you have a higher risk of suicide. You have to account for that before you attribute any of the remainder to gender dysphoria as such. And everyone who's a psychologist also understands that body-focused discomfort for women at puberty is normative. Because when women who have a higher probability of being depressed and anxious do become depressed and anxious, it preferentially takes the form of bodily discomfort. That's been known forever. So Chloe Cole, for example, no one explained that to her. No one sat her down and said, well, you're not very... She told me that the reason she decided to transition was because she kind of had a crush on Kardashian and that body type, you know, hyper curvy, hyper feminine. And Chloe realized when she entered puberty that she was probably going to have a boyish figure. And Chloe's a very attractive person. She would have had no trouble attracting the attention of men. But, you know, she was 11, 12, what the hell does she know? And she wasn't going to be the woman she had envisioned. She didn't really understand that, you know, there's a variety of female forms that men find attractive, that's for sure. And she certainly would have fallen into that category. She didn't know that it was typical for girls to undergo a fair bit of confusion when they hit puberty, and that would take the form of negative emotion. No one told her that. They just rushed her down the puberty blocking and surgical pathway. That's inexcusable. Yeah, it is. It's the worst thing. It's the worst thing I've seen professionals do, not only in my lifetime. I've studied atrocity for 40 years. I've never seen anything worse than what's happening right now. And that includes the sorts of things that were done in the camps in Germany. At least the goddamn Nazis admitted what they did was wrong. They tried to hide it. We trumpet it as a moral virtue. We're freeing the children. It's like, no, I don't think so. Mothers, I think what you're doing is sacrificing your child to the parading of your moral virtue. Oh, my son, he's so confused. He thinks he's a girl, but I still love him. That's how wonderful I am. Jesus Christ, Joel.
Is threatening you.
You have no idea how dark that is.
It's dark.
It's unbelievably
and it's
dark.
attached to an industry now.
Yeah, that's
which is
for
very
sure.
scary. There was
an industry and an ideology.
There was an article that was recently released where this person admitted that they said it was what was the exact phrase? The way they described gender transition as a life-saving medical care in order to get insurance for it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise insurance won't pay for it. So they were willing to describe it in that way to ensure that people would profit off of it, which is wild.
It's
terrifying. And it's so strange because I never would have believed that this could happen. If you had asked me 20 years ago if this was going to be a main concern, that people were worried about their children being roped into this ideology and convinced that they're
and then sterilized and mutilated.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know.
Terrifying.
Well, it's no wonder people see. Even Michael Schellenberger, who broke the WPATH files, when we talked about the role the WPATH played in establishing their own ideology-addled butchery as the standard of care for the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, Schellenberger said that after he had listened to Abigail Schreier and I talk about this trans mutilation, he was so appalled that he literally couldn't believe it. He just shelved it, said there's no way this can be true. And I can understand that because the more you look into it, the worse it gets. Right. It's unbelievably bad. These surgical procedures are so brutal and so experimental that they're
fungal roots weave through your mind.
I'm going to say it again.
The
they're
suffering
worse
drones a new
than
melody.
what the Bengali types did in the concentration camps in the 30s and 40s. And that's a pretty goddamn low bar. And it's no wonder people don't want to believe it. And people say, the lefties I've talked to, the centrists, well, it doesn't happen very often. It's like, oh yeah, how often is too often? Like once is too often. And it's not once. That's for sure.
No, it's happening
policy.
a lot.
In
Yeah.
fact, you're punished by your governing boards if you don't go along with it.
And what about the recent law that they passed in California where the schools don't have to tell the parents that the child has transitioned at school? They hide that information from the parents.
Well, they're just letting those children be free, you know, those ignored children
But it's
who
just-
are looking desperately for a pathway to, what would you call it, inclusion and celebration. Oh, you're so brave.
And then they're encouraged.
That's
and
for
then
sure.
They're given positive feedback.
Yes,
which
definitely.
Is a real thing.
Especially if they're alienated kids to begin with
Yeah.
and who are unsettled in their identity.
Yeah.
Right, and aren't being guarded by anyone and are vulnerable.
Right.
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 And
Oh,
the-
yeah.
And the parents are indoctrinated into this
Oh,
whole
and-
woke
or
ideology
terrified.
as well. Or terrified.
Right.
Yeah.
Indoctrinated, or the Munchausen by proxy types who get off on the fact that they have a child that's such a burden, but are still really, you know, what would you say, bearing up nobly under the weight.
And that is a very dark inclination that is well documented.
Yeah, well, that's the devouring mother for
Yes.
you. That was what Freud warned about back in like 1880. Yeah, she's a little too close. You remember the witch in the Hansel and Gretel story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gingerbread house. That's a little bit too good to be true when you're lost. What's
Yeah.
inside it? The witch that wants to fatten you up for her own delectation. That's
Yeah.
the devouring mother. That's the maternal instinct gone mad, right? Everything good has the potential for pathology in proportion to its goodness. So Lucifer is the intellect gone mad, right? The devouring mother is the mother who's a little too close to her kids, right? Yeah, a little too close. Jesus, brutal, Joe.
It's just
brutal.
so stunning how widespread it is. At least UK is pulling back
Yeah.
from this stuff, but they have socialized medicine, so they actually have to go on data, and
Canada hasn't pulled back.
which is wild.
Yeah, and
But I think that's
entirely
true, though.
predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the European countries have woken up, but I don't think it's going to slow it much because there's a huge underground market in puberty blockers.
Oh.
You know, I've talked to experts who figure that the ratio of people on black market puberty blockers to medically prescribed puberty blockers is at least 10 to 1.
Oh God! So they're just self-administering this
Yeah,
stuff?
right.
Oh God! And it's essentially chemical castration drugs that they used to use on pedophiles.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's what it is. And when you tell people that and they deny it because they don't know, and then they find out, it is so stunning.
They also don't want to know.
Right.
And no wonder. Yeah. Anyways, that's why we're trying to educate people.
Well, Jordan, I'm very happy you're doing this. I really am. It looks amazing. I think it's fantastic. I'm going to try some of them. I'll try some of your courses. It looks exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you want to go down a bit and I'll show you some of them. So we've got
introduce-
Brett and Heather Weinstein. So that's fun. Jonathan Pajot on symbolism and Christianity. That's excellent. James Orr, he's from Cambridge, lecturing on Plato. Marion Tupy on the economics of human flourishing. That's a very optimistic course. There's Brett and Heather, evolutionary inference.
And is this available currently?
It's up now, man. It's up now. Yeah, yeah. The greatest leaders of history. That's a great course. That's very inspiring. John Vervaeke, I really like John. He's so damn smart.
Right.
Boy Crisis with
Never
Warren
mind.
Farrell. I did a course on Nietzsche, on Beyond Good and Evil. Do you want to run that? That's a fun preview.
Sent him
Sure,
for an
let's
errand.
run that. We'll wrap it
It's
up
no
with
surprise he's made a
Okay,
mess of it.
okay. Phone books. I write
knock yourself
in a
out.
single sentence
But don't
what
come
it takes
begging for
other
coin if you
men
find
a
him.
book
You
to
try
write
to
that it
ransom
wasn't
him to me.
egotistical because
You'll
it
find yourself
happened to
skinned
be
and
true.
stuck with a fat old lout.
Beyond Good and Evil is a cardinal work, a prodroma to the entire intellectual and political history of the 20th
Blue
century.
tunic, dumb as a stick.
Brilliant, romantic, insightful, deep, psyche-shattering, dancing bit of literary genius. He's had a remarkable impact on thought over the last 140 years. It's reasonable to say that he philosophized with a hammer because his thought is extraordinarily condensed. To read Nietzsche is daunting psychologically. He's like a motivational speaker. He's practical in a way that philosophers seldom are. Nietzschean philosophy is a call to arms. To familiarize yourself with him is to arm yourself against the sea of troubles. And since you will encounter a sea of troubles, you better pray that you're armed. And this is one way to do it.
All right. How to philosophize with a hammer. Jordan, thank you very much, my friend.
Hey, man, it's always a pleasure to see you, Joe.
Yeah, it was very fun watching you on Kill Tony, too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was fun, and that was a good opportunity.
You were great, too. I can't wait for that to come out, because it's fun.
Oh, thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm supposed I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we can't no value to haters. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
Okay, episode 446. Apparently, Miami traffic was pretty bad, and we have to get off of this AOL net zero internet that we're using here. Right? Once we get paid, we start making money. We got to get off of net zero. Yeah. Because this internet stuff from the 90s and 2000s is not working. It was Tom's idea. Tom thought it was a good idea to use old school internet.
Tom.
But we eventually we're going to upgrade, guys. Eventually, we're going to go to AOL, and maybe one day we'll use modern day technology. But we're here. We're with you. And there's a lot of things to talk about.
Version 10.
Elon Musk denied. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. Reports of the $45 million pledge to Trump says he doesn't subscribe to cult of personality. Tesla shares drop at the same time as revenue misses estimates and price cuts dent profit. Tesla share falls 12% after earnings miss. And then at the same time, Elon Musk is seen at the Benjamin Netanyahu Capitol speech. He was invited by Benjamin Netanyahu. It was interesting who he sat next to. Was there's some commentary on that Adam's got. We'll cover that here in a minute as well. Kamala, lots of things coming up about Kamala right now. How she manages her money, index funds, and a 2.625% mortgage. Got to give her credit. She's trying to save that money, which is good. And she earns $231 million in donations on first day. And what would a Kamala Harris presidency mean for the economy? And by the way, God forbid you say anything about not liking her. According to some CNN experts, you're a racist. If you say anything bad about her, you got to be careful with that. Joy Reid says black people will look weird if they don't back Harris. And then them say Republicans who call Harris a DI candidate actually mean the N-word. What? Kind of weird, but it is what it is. We'll definitely cover this stuff here today. Trump gunman researched JFK assassination a week before the shooting. Keith Olbermann tells MLB to confiscate the St. Louis Cardinals franchise after accusing them of Trump-inspired celebration. I mean, Keith, the more he opens his mouth, the more he sounds like a dictator. Like he just sounds weird. Anyways, Kim Cheadle was asked two questions. On one end, she was asked, have you used any other communication apps to communicate with anybody in Secret Service or the government? In one questioning, she said yes. But to Lauren Boebert, she said no. So what is it? Some people are saying that's right there a cause for. Anyways, we'll get into that. There's very interesting things coming up from there. Former Iranian President Ahmadinejad survives assassination attempt. We'll talk about that. Economy, almost 4 in 10 Americans worry about paying bills, and numbers surpassing Great Recession era. High rents cause evictions to spike by 35% in pandemic boom towns. Mr. B's trans co-host apologizes for messaging 13-year-old child. What else we got here? Majority of people now say it's impossible to achieve the American dream. There's a couple other stories about the U.S. stocks sink after big tech earnings disappoint, and the hottest job market in a generation is over. And, we have to talk about the Biden addressing the nation, Oval Office, which he did yesterday. Tom has some thoughts. I don't even know if he believes it's real or not. Based on what some of the things Tom was saying, he'll break down his thoughts on it. But before we get right into the podcast, a couple things I do want to tell you is, for many of you today, with whatever you're going through, whether you're running a business, we ran a poll. We have a big audience that is a business owner. Matter of fact, out of the nearly 20,000 people that registered for the AI webinar that's coming up next Tuesday, over 1,000 of you that registered run a business doing between $10 to $100 million of top line revenue. This thing is getting packed right now, which again, I would highly recommend you get registered for this. It's going to be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. with a white paper I'm going to give you that you'll be able to use internally for yourself and your friends, your peers, your coworkers. That'll happen next Tuesday. If you haven't already registered, make sure you do so. And then the other thing I want to tell you guys with Monect, I was in New York yesterday. We got back late last night. We had a meeting in New York with Goldman Sachs, with many different people there. We had great conversations with the top brass at Goldman. And Monect, the conversation with Monect, the contest we announced with Monect, guys, is a contest that's very unique. A lot of you who have big plans of 2024 where you want to do second half of the year, this contest that was announced, effective July 1st, goes till August 31st. The winners of this contest will have a chance to meet Dwayne Johnson and also be invited to be on stage, recognized in front of nearly 10,000 people, where people are going to see you on stage, 10,000 people, your face with your Monect handle, for people to be close to you. This is an opportunity for you to network with thousands of people, of them directly knowing who you are. And the way to compete for this is either you're an expert and people ask you questions, or either you compete as a user asking others questions. Right now, in the lightweight category, the leader right now is Bryce Mitchell, UFC fighter. Number 2 is Caleb Altmaier, which Caleb is a pastor, I believe, out of Washington or Portland's got a big mission. He buys strip clubs and builds it into facilities to create rehabs for dancers, which is very interesting. What he's doing. For trafficking, yes. And then you have Jose Alvarenga, who is third place for lightweight. Rob, if you can zoom in a little bit. Middleweight, we have right now, as the ranking goes, Samuel Riley, then we have Matten Hakar, and then we have Aaron Borgman at third place. Heavyweight, we have Dennis Panev, then it's Candace Owens, then Dr. Calvin Ing. Home team, Vinny crushing it as usual. And then you have new users, signups. Mark Cook, first place, then it's Ronald Silsky, and then Russell Morgan, and existing users, Shaw, Matthew, user 0, have asked the most questions. If you haven't yet started participating in this, we had a client reach out to me the other day, ended up being a $100 million client business for somebody I refer to. There are people asking questions about homeschooling, parenting, kids, marriage, finance, preparing for an interview, many business questions, day-to-day questions, political questions. When in the election season, have you ever seen a season where you can go ask some of the biggest influencers on politics, what do you think about it, Cuomo? What do you think about it, Candace? What do you think about it, Tulsi? And they respond back to you. Never in the history of America have we had a time like this that you can actually be able to communicate with some of the biggest influencers on the left, right, and the center, and says, what are your thoughts on this? To be able to make better decisions for your family. The QR code at the top is right there. Download the QR code. And if you got any questions here for the folks on the panel, Rob, if you want to pull up the Monect handle for the 4 folks we have here, any one of these, you can ask me, Vinny, Adam, or Tom any questions that you have. Having said that, let's get right into the podcast. Okay, so I'm going to start off with economy because there's a lot of stuff that's going on with economy right now. Tom, I want to kind of start off with you on almost 4 in 10 Americans worry about paying bills, and numbers surpassing Great Recession era. 4 in 10 worry about paying bills, at the levels of pre-recession era. So what does this mean, and how many people are going through this today? Let me read this to you. 40% of American adults worry about paying their bills, with one resident, Angela Russell, noting the grocery store is just outrageous right now. Everything has gone up, clothing, my insurance. This concern suppresses levels seen during the 2008 Great Recession, where 37% were worried. Almost 16 years ago, Tom. Total household debt in the U.S. reached a record $17.69 trillion in early 2024, a 1.1% increase from the previous quarter. Greg McBride, chief financial analyst at Bankrate, emphasized that moderating inflation doesn't mean prices are coming down. They just aren't going up as fast. More than a quarter of Americans have resorted to skipping meals due to high grocery costs, with 80% feeling a notable increase in prices. Many are spending 60% of their monthly income on essential expenses, indicating significant financial pressure despite the growing economy and low unemployment rates. Tom.
So there's two things going on here, and we have been talking about it, and we've been encouraging people, hey, look, you know what, a side hustle, living conservatively, that's kind of the tools you have to fight against this. But it is not surprising that now the surveys are coming out. Everybody was ignoring it when we were talking about it, and the news would be out there. Wall Street Journal talked about it, Barron's talked about it, that there is 1.1 to 1.2 trillion in credit card, meaning there's people have less space on their credit card to buy something for an emergency, because they're adding to the credit card every month on groceries and things. Oh my gosh, if you're paying your power bill, your cable bill, and groceries on a credit card because you can't pay it at the end of the month, oh my gosh, no wonder that more than a quarter of Americans are saying, hey, we're going to skip a meal, we're not going to go out to dinner, whatever it is.
Cereal. So
yeah. And then the whatever it was, General Mills CEO, whoever that guy was, that said, hey, cereal for dinner, let's try that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, ramen noodles, just like we're all in college again. So number one, the Biden economy is just as bad, and as we've been saying it, the cumulative inflation of 30% is now showing up as people are screaming, and the higher rents, thanks to inflation, are causing people to get evicted. Right now, the middle class is in the middle of a freaking apocalypse. And the apocalypse is the Biden economy. And we're going to talk about it later today, but it really pisses me off that right now with the presumptive Harris candidacy, they're talking about, everybody talks about Harris as not being fair and everything. I'll tell you what I want to talk about is very fair. I want to talk about her economic record. I want to talk about what she did in California. I want to talk about what she has for Americans here, because people are hurting and they need frickin' help.
Let's stay on this. High rents cause evictions to spike by 35% in pandemic boom towns. Have you guys ever experienced being evicted? Have you ever experienced being evicted?
It's humiliating. It's terrible.
It's one, humiliating, and not only humiliating. Imagine you're married. You have to go to your wife and say, can't afford to pay for it. Imagine you're going back to your family saying, hey man, I can't pay for it. Can I come back and move back with the family or friends or a couch? Now, people go through different financial difficulties, but these numbers here, just to kind of give you an idea. Eviction and pandemic boom towns have surged by 35% compared to pre-pandemic levels, driven by high rents as a result of pandemic-induced migration to the Sun Belt. Cities like Nashville, Fort Worth, Jacksonville have experienced evictions increases in 31%, 25%, and 14% respectively. The rent spikes were fueled by the influx of new residents during the pandemic, which outpaced the earning of local residents, according to Realtor.com. Rent increases peaked at 17% year over year in early 2022, particularly in Sunbelt cities. Although the rental market is still challenging for lower-income renters, recent trends show a decrease in rent prices in Sunbelt. Austin, Texas saw the largest drop at 6.6% in April, while Nashville and Jacksonville reported declines of 5.9 and 5.6%. Adam, thoughts on this?
Look, times are tough, man. We've seen since we started the podcast 2020, the stimulus checks that went out during COVID, the money printing that went out during COVID. I think at one point it was 40% of all the money that was ever printed was done in 2020. Now I'm seeing data that it's as much as 80% has been printed since 2020. Whatever the number is, there's been a shocking amount of money printed. And what does that lead to? That's led to inflation. Now, if you want to basically put America in a bubble versus the rest of the world, America is performing wonderfully compared to the rest of the world. But we have high standards here. And it's not exactly comparing America to the rest of the world. It's comparing America to where, are you better off now or are you better off 4 years ago. And as James Carville famously said, it's the economy, stupid. There's a difference between the numbers and the data versus how people feel. And people just don't feel that America is trending in the right direction. And you can't tell them to feel a certain way. You actually have to show them. So here's what I can tell you about personally. I've never been richer. TBD, you've probably never been richer. Tom, Vinny, life's good if you're actually doing good things. You know, it's the K-shaped economy. The rich are getting richer, and the poor will always be poor. There's a difference between poor and broke. Poor is like, I literally make no money. I have nothing going on. I'm just poor. I'm desolate. Life's not good. But broke is a different thing. Broke is you're working, you're hustling, you're trying, but you just can't get ahead. And I feel like the middle class is getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and they just can't figure out how to get ahead. That's why they say there's a difference between Wall Street and Main Street. If you're looking at Wall Street these days, the market's at all-time highs. It's been over 40,000. The S&P, I know NASDAQ took a hit. Bitcoin, everything that's going on there. But here's ultimately my point, because it's going to come down to an election year. I'm seeing the messaging that's going out from the Trump campaign. I'm seeing the messages going out with Kamala campaign. Everything's going out there. If abortion is your number one issue, vote Democrat. If the economy...
No, it appears to be shielded from physical and magical influence. And even without the shield, the extraction would involve severe cranial trauma. It is not ideal. The process would surely kill you. But not to worry. Should you transform, I will happily perform a new examination. A Nautiloid? Fascinating. I have never set foot on one myself. They were our warships during the greatest eras of the Illithid Empire. We ruled the entire astral plane from their decks. The design was lost when the Gith rebelled and ended our dominion. Of course, I am sorry I cannot assist you in its removal. But I have an idea.
Oh, perhaps I should start taking notes.
There may be a way to bypass that stasis. There are many alchemical substances that can influence the mind. I do not intend to shatter its protection. I need only bypass the interference that prevents me from communicating with the lava. A tincture distilled from a collection of rare mushrooms. They have subtle psionic influence. I would require a fresh ton of madness and Timusk spores. But be warned, in their natural state, both of these mushrooms can be quite dangerous. Timusks cause confusion in those that approach them. The tongue is self-explanatory.
The Underdark, of course, although they are quite rare, and their discovery perilous. I imagine Lenore would have them in her possession. She served Mystra as a cleric. The Southwest when I last saw her, although her tower does have a tendency to move.
May your travels be safe and swift.
Welcome back. Have you made any new discoveries? I do enjoy a good bargain, if anything in my private collection is to your liking. Very well. I have much...
I greet you, child of the sun. How has your search for the mushrooms fared? I was born with a propensity for arcane magic my people despise. It gave me the strength to resist the elder brain. Every waking hour I pushed back against its dire hold. My wizardry empowered me. The moment its control shattered, I fled. Before the colony discovered, I had defected. In the beginning, I had an arrangement with a lich. Excellent company, despite what one would expect. I required brains, he required souls. A perfect symbiosis. But our ambitions eventually splintered. I wished to better the world, and he preferred its rot. So I left his company. And thus I now feed from those who act against the Society's goals. Perhaps the peoples of the Underdark will be less inclined to violence if they comprehend the cost, yes? These are fine specimens. It will only take me a moment to brew them to proper potency.
Ormelium turns away to prepare the potion, lost in its own musings.
You must drink the entire draught. I can make no promises as to its taste. Of course. Return when you are ready.
Have you spoken with Skris lately?
Yes. She is cataloging Coatuan fertility rituals.
Oh. Well, perhaps after I finish my research here, I'll join her.
I have never seen anything like it, Blurg. Is my species evolving?
Perhaps, but at such an accelerated rate.
It simply shouldn't be possible.
How is your more personal research progressing?
Not well. The nutrition my species receives from other minds is difficult to emulate.
Worry not, friend. You'll find the key soon enough. Have you spoken with Skris lately?
Yes. She is cataloging Coatuan fertility rituals.
Oh. Well, perhaps Perhaps after I finish my research here, I'll join her.
I have never seen anything like it, Blurg. Is my species evolving?
Perhaps, but at such an accelerated rate.
It simply shouldn't be possible. I greet you, son-child. Yes, although it may be a touch cold by now.
The potion is disgusting beyond description. The only mercy is that it goes down quickly.
Not a drop left. Very good. As the potion influences your mind, you may find yourself acting irrationally. Try and stay focused.
The world loses its edges, its finer boundaries. You are fluid, but trapped like a creature suspended in amber. Dark holes bite at the edges of your vision, but the void cannot draw you in. The tadpole spasms, seizes. It's fighting the potion even harder than you are. Fear pierces your mind like knives of ice. The parasite digs deeper, as if it needs to hollow out your skull. Cold blades lose their edge. You are stalwart, turning that tide of fear against itself. The parasite swells with power, more power than you have ever felt before. It surges and twists, lashing out against that which would dare to intrude. The parasite in your mind quiets, pleased with itself.
Omeluum, are you well?
That lava is like nothing I have ever observed before. Its power is unsettling. Such an outcome was not in my calculations. There is more to this being than mere stasis. Indeed. Although I may have another solution, albeit a temporary one. I possess a ring of mind shielding. It prevents elder brains from noticing my presence. It will not remove the lava, but it will limit its influence, both positive and negative. I would offer it as a gift, but in truth, The ring is priceless. Is there anything you could offer me in turn? A fascinating topic indeed. What can you tell me? What a brilliant experience. To feel one step closer. Here, may it serve you.
A pretty thing. And at least it offers us some protection from the tadpole.
Of course, the lava remains. Be ever...
How is your more personal research progressing?
Not well. The nutrition my species receives from other minds is difficult to emulate.
Worry not. You'll find the key soon enough.
Damn it all. Don't. Eyes. To yourself. Oh. Dweger. Slashed me. Oh. Poison.
Like dwarves, Dwegar have innate resistance to poison, and thus no need for intricate brews. Though deadly if left untreated, the poison can be cured by the antidote or natural remedies.
Ah, gods. Whatever that... Why are you helping me? I thank you for your help. But... Carl's garters. Oh, I don't have time for this. My kin need me. Maybe not. But we can pay. We're Ironhand clan, best art of... We were on an expedition down here when the Dwegar snatched us up. I got away, but not the others. The Greys have them digging out some old ruin across the lake. Some dusty temple. It doesn't matter. They'll work my clan to death before they ever get near it. Just mining for
The briefest hesitation.
But our work pays well. Help my clan, and we'll make it worth your while. I swear. Fine. It's complicated. We were searching for something to turn the tide. That's all I can say. But it's worth a lot to us. Understand? Look, you've done me a good turn and you deserve... If you need to go your own way, I respect that, but still, thank you. But here... I'll mark where I may...
What is the creature doing to those...
The Sovereign's thick fingers stroke the corpse at its feet. A droning melody greets you as the creature turns its gaze to you.
Flesh talker, I show you a memory.
A violent vision grips you. Dwergar, dark dwarves chopping myconid remains.
They broke our peace. They killed our young.
The Sovereign's song slows to the...
We laid waste to many.
The Sovereign's song...
I sense your resolve. You will find Dwergar invaders.
I admit, I like this one's approach. A little genocidal, but effective.
An illusion comes over you. A Dwergar choking on a cloud of gleaming dust.
Accept this gift.
The Sovereign gifts you one more vision. A wall of vines parting to reveal glowing...
Riches of magic and mind. Cleanse, you do the circle a service. We will await, we breathe life into our... The dead make a fine host for my...
If I die down here, destroy my corpse.
You may not. The spores hear only the circle. The
deep purple.
The Dwergar seek a gnome. It is a guest.
Not well. The nutrition my species receives from other gnomes is difficult to complete.
Get the leather. I ain't wasting more words on you until it's done. What a hunt. Right. I'll mop up here. You get across the Ebon Lake. Find Sergeant Thrin. She'll reward you.
Light on my feet. Swords meet sorcery.
Die, so your carcass can rise.
No escape.
What do I have to lose?
Concentrate.
Death is but a word away.
Take two. Break them.
Let's make this quick.
The witching hour. It shall be done.
moving.
Victory is assured.
Hatched up, pushing on.
As bad as it could have. Need to find a way forward.
As my species evolve,
Perhaps, but at such an acceleration.
It greets you with a harrowing elegy, cheerless as the new moon. The music shifts, still melancholic, but now streaked with hope.
do you hear a new harmony? Serenity. I name you Peace Bringer.
Fragrant spores waft through the air. Your heart swells with
Freely you have given to us. The Guardian Gate is open. Go and claim. But before this, I have another boon to ask of you. You have cut out the Dwegar blight, but not its source.
In your mind's eye, Spore shows you a drow striding among Myconid dead.
Near. This one is called. He hunted us. Hunt him in turn. Bring me his head, and I will know my circle is safe.
My, this sovereign likes to delegate.
The drow lurks in the ruins beyond the lake. Bring.
I'm coming along, just not fast enough. I'm almost sorry to hear it. There's plenty more guarding my people, but I'd say you've made a fine. Like I said, save my kin. And if you kill any Dwegar, you won't see it. Where are you?
The cover proudly announces this book to be Flumph Mating Rituals. It is exactly what it appears to be. A rather stained and unsavory look at the mad supposition, questionable diagrams, and many gleeful references to tentacles. Not an overly academic text. The scrutiny proves too much. The lurid text melts away before your eyes. An illusion. What remains are simple instructions written in a spare hand. The secret to forging adamantine.
Again with the adamantine forge. These people need a new weapon.
Nothing like it. It's almost a pity things end.
Get confused by one, blown up by the other. These creatures did battle with Dwergar.
Watch your back. Watch the shadows. Keep it quick.
Ah, right. What were you saying? I was looking for Dereth. I must. For you, Ta.
Have a lot on my mind. Well, in it. With haste.
That's curious.
Whatever comes, I'm ready. On I go.
Yes. She is cataloging Coatoan fertility rituals.
I'd better do the talking.
Greetings. What not?
Still breathing, despite everything.
I greet you, son-child. your travel.
Best be on my way.
It might be enough to cover rent. Well? Dead. Worthless old fool. He had one bleeding job. Love. Balin was a rotten old bastard. Treated me like an old shoe for 70 years before his mind started to go. Softened him up. Losing his mind was the only good he ever did by me. Collecting, not no more though. I've yet, and best of all, it cures my dangerously underweight purse. I'll find my way out.
Better be cautious. Don't want to draw any attention. Swift as my feet can carry me.
A vessel wobbles on the lake's murky waters.
You! What are you doing on Gek's raft? Where's Gek? Who are you?
Your parasite stirs briefly, then goes still. The Dwegar is not infected.
Just like old times.
dice roll in my favor.
Torment!
Reveal!
Let's finish this. Let me strike true.
Incendia via!
The craft is ready to sail.
Whipping it ready, lass. Company's calling.
What do we got here? Dead hoon walking, seems like. Got any reason I shouldn't sever your head and toss it to the Rothe?
Let's not get into another scrape, shall we? Still catching my breath after the last one.
That's so.
You feel the slightest of stirrings in your head. The Duergar is not infected, yet your minds resonate.
I'll be. You ain't shitting. Felt the tingle. In that case, let's talk business. Your twat's old friend Nair caused a rockfall, trapped tighter than a hornet's arse.
Couple of known slaves stuck with him too. Little bastards.
You absolute shaggers owe us a crapload of coin. You want through? Make a donation.
Deep gnomes, mostly. Easy to feed. Fat thumbs for digging.
That a problem for you? Fine. Now pay the toll, Jarg. I'm tired of your face. Unclog your hole. But I'm warning you.
So we must save the drow first, then sever his head after. Oh.
Let's just do the job and get out of here. All this talk of slaves is just depressing.
How much farther can I go? Better than nothing. Dead drow, publicly displayed. Good way.
Don't like... Absolute must have took you in. Caught him hung them here as a warning.
I speak true, brothers. You know it in your hearts. You know it in your very souls.
We need no Lolth, no Spider Queen. Father Mermouth is the head of Clan Lur. He hatched us, raised us, feeds us.
What care we for his business here? He keeps us small, keeps us contained. We should be with the Spider Queen, revered, adored.
You've read that harming spiders is illegal among Lolth's faithful.
And Father Mermouth is our past. Lolth is our future.
Useless? Hideous?
Xanta, is it so? You see? Father Mermouth's time has passed. Come.
Her embrace. We're ready. We follow.
Yes.
Snitch. No one drugs with Clan Flameshade.
You got a brain of your own. Use it. Unless you're here to kick some stiffs lakeside, I suggest you... You gotta be kidding. These rocks.
You spot a shiny trinket on one of the corpses.
Hey, what are you... Something caught your eye, eh? That's grand. I'd be willing to let you take it, too, for a mere pittance.
Tidy. Some of us. They'll let anyone in around here.
Eat and drink freely, for the lady doth come.
Hey, it's Skickpick, you piss. Another piss pot. You flirt. Now jump to it.
I think we've found two Dwegai who are gonna get spitting.
True soul, yeah? Tell the sergeant we won't move a pebble. You just take one. They're swarming the place. They'll squirm a bit. All it takes is a stiff crop to get them in line. And you'll appreciate how... Hey! Sticks coming right up! Stick shit talks like smug, and here...
And then shagged it.
Here's to smug! No! Shit. You got one of Nair's moon lanterns, Jacques? So, if you're heading Moonrise way, you ain't getting...
Toplands are clogged with the Death Dark. Choke you in no time.
You daft?
We were warned about the curse. Can't say I fancy our chances without a moon lantern.
Let's just hope you're right.
No one drugs with Clan Flameshade.
What's a fort like this doing in the Underdark?
Whoever built it, they let it rot for ages.
Reinforcements, huh?
Gold accents aren't too tight.
How peculiar. A sun dweller in these parts. Look here, my topside friend. I need fresh eyes. And I doubt the rock, the rubble. Oh, take a look. Tell me what you see. And be thorough.
The statue's meandering curves and golden edges stand out. Can you consider the differences?
Anything standing out?
Boulders and stone bricks of various sizes clutter the corridor. Many split cleanly in two. Yet some walls remain fully intact. No quake brought these rocks down. They were smashed through in an instant.
What do you think?
Several glassy stones stand out in the hottest of flames, smoothed the stone and left sulfuric...
Yes, sulfur. Alas, you've left me with more questions. Well, let's see what you've got. That's all then.
If you want, and if you want.
As you look at the skeletons,
Dark Justicia uniforms. These were Shah worshippers. The same as me.
Still.
Onward then. Might find something useful.
Oh, for a skeleton key. No Dwergar made this. The design looks sharp.